I want to ask you one more question about abortion. Because, again, I got family. This one is my wife. Every time this issue comes up, she says, yeah, right to life from conception to birth. And as soon as the kid is here, they ain't interested in life no more. So, in other words, health care for the baby, food for the baby. The mother is poor. You don't want the government being on welfare. You don't like welfare. You're not providing benefits. There's no housing subsidy. There's no cash grant. They're living in poverty and whatnot. This woman is struggling to keep this baby with baby formula and so forth, and she doesn't have any place to go and any shelter and any place to support. So how come all of the pro-life people are gung-ho about people having babies, but not so, if they're Republican especially, interested in having the help provided to these women so they can take care of the babies?
I've heard that question. I think it sort of gets down to a matter of worldview, right? I don't start from the position that it's the government's ultimate responsibility to take care of a pregnant woman and her child. I start from the position that is that child's father's responsibility to take care of that woman and that child. So we're already starting at two different places and diverging. Now, if he's not there, I believe in a social safety net, but when you're on your third generation using the safety net, it's clear that it's turned into a spider's web because you and your family can't get out of its grip. So I don't take the position that enlarging the welfare state is to the net benefit of American families. And in fact, what I would argue is that we have created a certain sense of bureaucratic patriarchy where unmarried mothers, elected officials, and unelected bureaucrats have a symbiotic relationship where all three need one another. And I would like to pull women out of that. One, because I think the incentive structures are all wrong. You can't, and particularly, this goes back particularly, in the race conversation, people who are always talking about, wealth inequality. You're not going to build wealth if your spouse is the federal government. That's not happening. So I'm big on responsibility, right? I studied as an engineer, as an undergrad. And one of the few things I still remember from taking physics is the law of conservation of energy. It basically says once created, energy cannot be destroyed, sort of pass, from one form to the other. And I think in sort of the social sphere, there's a law of what I call the law of dissipating responsibility. That once responsibility is created, it can't be destroyed. It's just passed from one entity to the next. And when that responsibility leaves the father and moves to an unelected bureaucrat, that the trend lines are not pointing in the right direction, because they can't possibly care for you and your child when they have, depending on what city it is, a couple hundred other kids on their docket. So I understand the desire for a larger sort of welfare state, and there are a number of Republicans who have put forth positions to try to strengthen families. I think Senator Rubio, Senator Romney both have plans. Some of them involve expanding, maternal leave. Some of them involve, cash stipends or child tax credits for families that have children. And I'm not sort of facially opposed to those things per se. I just believe and before we get to the policy, let's mark out the definitions. Right? Let's get the incentives correct. Let's get the interests correct. And one of my frustrations, and this is a frustration for the conservative right, is as I was hearing people talking about post-Roe America, some people started to sound like liberals. The classic line is a hospital room is too small for a woman, her doctor, and the federal government. But judging by what I was hearing, it was too small for the father as well, because his position never came up in the discussion. And I am a big believer, Glenn, both in this area, in the area of crime and punishment, of getting more comfortable asking the question, where is the father? I know some people don't want to hear that, but the responsibilities have to be put back in their right place, because as a Christian, I believe, when the Bible describes the church as the body of Christ, But here in civil society, we have a body politic. It is grossly deformed. The welfare state, the bureaucracy is way too big, and there has been a corresponding atrophying of civil and civic institutions as well as the family. And I don't want to live in a country, and I don't want to pass on the world to my kids where the vast majority of kids feel as if it's the government's role to support them. The vision that I have for the future is one in which husbands and wives are raising their children together in loving, low conflict homes. I know it's not, that's my ideal, and that's what I'm always pushing towards.